Guru Brahma, Guru Vishnu, Guru Devo Maheshwara, Guru Sakshat Parbrahma, Tasmai Sri Gurave Namaha. Hey Bhagavan, thy child's tiny hands have gathered these small flowers from the immense garden of thy glory and woven them into a clumsy garden. But it is offered at thy divine feet with a big noise, calling it all about Shivananda. The fragrance and the beauty and the color belong to thee. It is thine own unsurpassable love for thy children that makes thee accept this too. It was said of Lord Krishna that everything about him was sweet. It is true of Bhagavan Shivananda. Today, Dr. Kuppaswamy transformed himself into Swami Chidananda, and the austere, stern and hard taskmaster Swami Chidananda has somehow mysteriously vanished. When and how, no one knows. The Shiva we see in our midst today is the most lovable concrete manifestation of divine life. May that love dwell in our hearts. Sadguru Bhagwan ki Jai.
The Way to Bliss, Peace and Joy. By Sri Swami Chidananda. How you utilize your worldly life will depend upon how you use this earth vehicle in the form of body, senses, mind and intellect. The senses were given to the individual human soul as avenues of perception to see the world of things, get knowledge and enable a person to live a life of understanding. If you subvert the senses into instruments of indulgence, then these senses will enslave you to sensual appetites and urges. They become then the source of suffering and pain. The art and science of living is to know how to be fulfilled on both the earthly and the spiritual planes and how to strike a balance between the two. Each should help the other. There should not be an inner tug of war and conflict. If you have succeeded in relating these two to each other in a positive and a creative way, then music will come out of your life. Similarly, the mind was given to the individual soul of man to observe and understand life and to develop knowledge. However, if the desire nature of the mind is allowed to dominate the consciousness, your behavior becomes the source of grief and sorrow, because you are caught in the net of endless desire. Desire, by its very nature, can never be fully satisfied. As you go on fulfilling desire, it goes on intensifying. This has been discovered by the illumined sages who said, desire that has been aroused in the mind can never be subdued by the fulfillment of that desire. The more you keep fulfilling it, the more it intensifies and multiplies. Desire can be overcome only by transcending it. But how can desire be transcended? It is done through philosophical understanding and through realizing your higher nature. One realizes, I am complete and self-sufficient. I am myself of the nature of bliss. I don't need to run after fulfilling desires in order to find my happiness. I find that joy comes to me from my own inner self. If instead of this you make your mind only a playground for desires and cravings, then in this net of desire you will be caught in self-created misery and grief. Even if you take 100 births through the ages, you will never be able to satisfy the endless desires and find happiness. Desire has to be sublimated, conquered and transcended, as this is the way to bliss and peace and joy. But who teaches this to our children, and who has this field of knowledge as part of their educational process? No wonder human society is so miserable. Another great mistake in human life is allowing the intelligence to become gripped by ego. The function of the intellect is to govern the mind and to give it the proper lead so that it goes in the right direction. But through ignorance and lack of insight, or if our elders, parents and teachers fail to give us the knowledge to make life meaningful, the intelligence may become dominated by the ego. The intellect is then perverted into a center of selfishness, and when this happens, the intellect forfeits its status as a governing principle within our own psyche. It is no more able to direct the mind and to guide it, but instead it is gripped by self-satisfaction and desire fulfillment. The pursuit of pleasure becomes the main activity of the intellect, and man suffers a downfall as the senses run riot. The mind becomes totally uncontrolled, because it is no longer exercising its proper function. Such a perverted intellect throws to the wind all normal considerations, and it wants only to gain its selfish ends. Where the intellect is dominated by an ego identified with desire, the mind becomes totally entangled in the web of desire, and the life of man derails completely. The misguided mind does not care for moral principles or ethical standards, but without these, life becomes an animalistic process. Ethical standards and moral criteria alone make human life superior to that of animals. When the intellect is under the influence of ego, it becomes perverted and ignores these standards. Man is then no longer able to attain his divine destiny. If this is clearly seen and man corrects his errors, retraces his steps and makes proper use of the mind and intellect as tools of evolution to grow in knowledge of his inner nature, then the intellect and mind become blessings and assets. Otherwise, they are liabilities, and man suffers as a consequence. What is more serious, his evolutionary process is retarded, he is enslaved by desire and dominated by selfish ego, and he puts a stop to the ascending process. Thus, God's plan for man becomes thwarted. Man becomes his own enemy and the greatest obstacle in the fulfillment of his divine destiny. Swami Chidananda.
Om Namo Bhagavate Shivaya.